right? You feeling all right?
Feeling great. I'm a little nervous about the doll behind you there.
These are my friends.
She's about to unalive the poor bear. You bought 2 friends with you today?
We're not using the word unalive anymore.
Okay. I just want to be
We're going to use the word whacked.
politically
Use
correct.
Use the word whack.
Well, it looks like he's about to whack poor Teddy over there. The doll.
He'll be all right.
He'll be all right, you think? God bless.
So, moving along. So we established that's the Rago family, right? So Rago marries an Irish, half Italian, I believe, family from the West Side.
Okay.
And the West Side's the village. And when everybody says the West Side, who do you think of? Well, when it comes to the mob and stuff, you want some more coffee?
Yeah.
Well, let me say this.
Go ahead.
When you talk about a neighborhood, right? Talk about the West Side. We think about it.
Mm-hmm.
That neighborhood was kept so, I don't want to say strict. It was so well kept. What I mean by that is you couldn't around that neighborhood.
People watched out for one another.
It's when I think about all the kids that came out of that neighborhood, that grew up in that neighborhood, they were all good, solid families. No scumbags. They were just raised right, you know? And I think a lot of that had to do with the people that ran the neighborhood.
So they were respectful of each other as well.
I really believe, and not because I have a personal relationship or had one, because it was because of one guy, only because of one guy's influence on that neighborhood was kept immaculate.
And that's the name that comes to mind when you think of that neighborhood.
There's an example. You couldn't go there and buy drugs.
Wasn't allowed.
You couldn't go there and cause a riff. You couldn't go into a bar and get into a fight. You couldn't go into a joint and cause trouble. If you did, your whole family got called down the next day.
And it got straightened out.
You talk about micromanaged. Any kid from that neighborhood that grew up there, they would say they all got micromanaged. You would be waking up. There'd be a wise guy calling you down, going, hey, get down to the club. You got to be there at 1 o'clock. Yeah. Not only they call you, they tell you, okay, take your mother, your father, everybody in the family. We're going to have a sit down. That's how on top of everybody they were in that neighborhood.
We kept it tight. That's how you keep things high. A little bit of a control freak, I would imagine, right? Being polite here. You know what I mean.
But looking back, that neighborhood was very small, but had a huge reputation.
Yeah.
That traveled all throughout the 5 boroughs. It's almost you're envious that you didn't grow up in that neighborhood. Because you know why? If you grew up in that neighborhood, okay, and you were from this one person's neighborhood, they had your back.
Yep. Sounds that way, 100%.
If you were from his neighborhood, they had your back 100%. They didn't just, no.
Because that's how he ran things.
Greg goes off and marries this girl who actually her brothers, I don't want to say I grew up with them, but I hung around them a lot. So they hung around me a lot. Vice versa. Well, it doesn't matter. It's called the Vaughns. I think about another great family, right? From the West Side. Mother and father, they used to own a laundromat. They lived right off of Bedford Street, down the Palmer, right upstairs. And you had the daughter, which married my cousin Gregory, Kim. Then you had the 3 brothers, Brian Vaughn. Well, I think Kevin's the oldest. Kevin Vaughn, Brian Vaughn, and Gerard Vaughn. And I tell you, I think back, the Vaughns, they were just good kids, you know, tough kids.
Another good family, a good example of,
another good family
staying tight and doing the right thing.
Yeah, they're just good kids. Kevin, I would say, was more like, and I'm talking about kids that were tough.
Yeah.
They'd never back down from a fight. If I was in a fight with somebody, I'd rather have those kids with me than a lot of guys. Because you know they're gonna fight, win or lose. They have balls. Kevin, I would say, wasn't more. Kevin, I would say, he didn't care. He didn't care about wise guys, or he didn't care about, he never got enamored with all that stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't his focus.
Nah, Kevin was more, when I think about it, Kevin was more laid back. You know, a good friend to have, you know, and he didn't care. Brian, not a tough son of a bitch. These kids were like big kids too, scrappy, you know. I say Brian cared more about that. Brian was more enamored with the life,
the lifestyle,
the made guy, wise guys, all that stuff. I think he was a little bit more enamored with it. I don't know where they're at today. You know, I think they're okay. I hope they're okay. But that's how there's a relation there.
Interesting.
And that leads me into the West Side. So the West Side, you had a lot of tough kids that came out of that neighborhood too. One kid in particular, kid called Di Benedetto. He was one of the tough kids out of that neighborhood. He wound up getting killed.
Wow.
But he was a tough kid. There's another kid, Rocco. Rocco I didn't get along with too much. He wound up getting a bullet in his head.
Wow.
They found him in a container. I know the guys that did it. We'll talk about it another time.
That's another show.
But I didn't get along with Rocco too much because, you know, he was in the junk business. And the way he did business, I don't like. You know, he's the type of guy, you know, who try to get one over on you. You know, try to like
working angles.
Hey, give me consignment, I'll pay you back, or you know, try to milk you along.
Yep.
But the West Side was the better side.
For lots of reasons.
It was the better side.
Organized.
They had a nice little feast over there.
Yeah.
Everything was cleaned up. There was no riffraff.
And you couldn't mess around in that neighborhood.
No.
At all.
No, you know what was good about it too was that I think a lot had to do with it because it was just one family that came out of there.
Keep things tighter that way, really.
In my neighborhood, you had all 5 families there.
Yeah, that's right.
There was so much crisscross and so much who's with who and this, that. It was too much to keep track.
Yeah. Sometimes things could get too big.
And then you had different kids from different blocks. And then different blocks with different wise guys. And different wise guys were with different families. And different rankings and stuff like that. So when you went to the West Side, there was just one family, one regime.
Controlled environment, I'm telling you.
And that is it.
Smart.
And talk about contained and small, contained, micromanaged.
Small but mighty, they say.
But when you think about it, no scumbags really came out of that neighborhood.
Interesting on how that works, right?
I got to say the truth.
Yeah.
You know, now you go to the 4th Ward, like my neighborhood, a lot of mishmash, a lot of, you know, all 5 families are there.
Every neighborhood's represented. Every family's represented. Every cousin's there. Everybody's got a nickname.
I tell you, the 4th Ward, like I told you about that first heartbreak I had.
Yes.
Right?